Hey there, welcome to Film in the Blink. My name's Ian, I watch a lot of movies. Here's everything I watched in the second half of the month. I kept the month going with a masterpiece, 1963's High and Low, written by Akira Kurosawa, Hideo Oguni, Ryuzo Kikushima, and Ejiro Hisaita, and directed by Akira Kurosawa. When it comes to people who understand film inside and out, every aspect, every fiber, the list isn't very long. But right at the top is Akira Kurosawa. And while you could look at most any of his films for reasons why, High and Low is maybe the best encapsulation of all of his strengths and experience. The film centers on a vengeful kidnapping and the ensuing police investigation that upends the life of a prominent shoe company exec just as he's making a play for total control of his company. Kurosawa's carefully considered seemingly everything from the space the characters occupy and the effect that space has on them, to the way great framing can make or break the emotionality of a scene, to the ever-shifting tempo of a quality thriller that he tracks perfectly for the audience that would make even Lydia Tarr herself go, he's good. But more than any other element, I found myself particularly drawn to the blocking. Kurosawa turns how he orients his actors in the frame into an art, using their bodies to compose striking tableau after striking tableau, underscoring the shame, the isolation, the humanity of scenes like I've never seen before. I'm concerned yet cautiously optimistic about Spike Lee's upcoming remake with Denzel and for some reason Ice Spice, but who knows, maybe Kurosawa's always needed some more. 5 stars. Next, a little indie that just came to the Criterion Collection, 1991's Dogfight, written by Bob Comfort and directed by Nancy Savoca. Most whirlwind romances in movies feel laughably ungrounded or borderline cartoony, but not Dogfight. The bulk of the runtime follows Eddie Birdlace, played by River Phoenix, on his last night before being deployed overseas as he and his buddies search for the ugliest girls they can find to bring to a dance. Eventually he encounters Rose, a timid young waitress who he uglies up to take to the dance, and the two embark on a night neither could have anticipated. What sets Dogfight apart from other feeble whirlwind romances is that its goal isn't to convince you that Eddie and Rose have fallen in love in a single night. Instead, its goal is to convince you that Eddie and Rose finally feel seen for the first time in their lives. There's definitely some romance intermingled in that feeling, but it's not the primary force drawing them to one another. I love the writing choices in the last act, and especially that emotional last moment we leave Eddie and Rose in. Fantastic film. 4 stars. Then Left Hand Green, it's Twisters, written by Mark L. Smith and directed by Lee Isaac Chung. Nothing but certified smoke shows chasing smoke shows here. Twister's first trailer went so hard, I wondered if the film could match it. It didn't, but it wasn't a far cry from the thrill ride the trailer advertised either. After a weaker Act 1 and 2, I thought Act 3 was oddly strong and bookended what came before in a pretty satisfying way. The VFX couldn't match the raw power of the look of the original, and the attempt to recreate the large ensemble cast didn't go far for me, but when things got rolling, I had a pretty good time. And while I'd hoped that Lee Isaac Chung's long-awaited follow-up to 2020's impeccable family drama Minari would have been more artistically substantial, I get the temptation for breakout directors to take the paycheck for whatever big studio film comes their way. Hoping his next film starring Steven Yeun and produced by Bong Joon-ho really lets him cook. 3.5 stars. Next, the liveliest film of the month, 1986's True Stories, written by David Byrne, Stephen Tobolowsky, and Beth Henley, and directed by David Byrne. Growing up in Texas, I don't remember small-town life being quite this exuberant and zany, but you do you, David Byrne. What I do vibe with is the gorgeous Texas cinematography that rivals Paris, Texas for the film to best capture the beauty of that landscape. The energy of the film feeds off that natural splendor to create something heightened enough to let you know this isn't the real world, but close enough to make you wish it could be. And major props to my local mall for standing in as the mall in the film. I worked at the American Eagle there for a summer in high school, and it was one of the absolute worst experiences of my life, but knowing there was once a movie star fashion show there is a nice consolation prize. 4.5 stars. Then I rewatched an all-time fave, 2004's Howl's Moving Castle, written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. This is maybe the most gorgeously animated film of all time. Like, what else can even touch this? And while my Miyazaki heart will always belong first and foremost to 1984's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind for the impossible story it manages to tell so beautifully, it's hard to say my eye doesn't wander when I'm watching Howl's Moving Castle. It's never not phenomenal in its themes, bold storytelling, and emotional impact. Even Miyazaki's trademark burst of inspired weirdness seems right at home in the daring world he's put together. If you've never seen this, do yourself a favor and change that. If you have seen this, congrats, you did it, now watch it again. 5 stars. Next, a very special screening of 1955's Rebel Without a Cause, written by Stuart Stern and directed by Nicholas Ray. Rebel Without a Cause is my runner-up for favorite movie of all time. James Dean, Natalie Wood, and Sal Mineo name a more iconic trio. Each time I visit the film's angsty, technicolor world of repressed dreams and violent emotions that rip through characters like they're turning into werewolves, I fall more and more in love. And speaking of falling in love, my boyfriend rented out a private theater at Vidiot's in LA so we could watch this just the two of us, and he may or may not have proposed in the cutest way possible. Big shout out to Vidiot's for helping make that surprise truly perfect. Goes without saying, 5 stars. Over to one of the weirdest genre films around, 2022's The Innocent, written by Louis Garrel and Tanguy Ville, and directed by Louis Garrel. Hearing this billed as a mix between a heist film, a family drama, and a rom-com put this firmly on my radar. Now having seen how all those pieces come together, it's pretty impressive. Right off the bat, the film shows you its goofy, bleeding heart before plunging you into the disillusioned world of crime and broken dreams. Midway through, I was worried that initial goofiness was just a flash in the pan, but the last third doubled down on fun in a clever way that felt true to the story writer-director-star Louis Garrel wanted to tell. This is the third film I've seen Nomi Merlanten after Portrait of a Lady on Fire and Tar, and in all 3 films, she's taken what could be an overlooked supporting performance and turned it into a memorable, scene-stealing showcase for her as an actor. The thrill in seeing her do that in The Innocent with her role as the sexually freewheeling Clemence is she gets to show off some broad comedy chops, including some great scenes where she's playing out highly dramatic moments with a wink to the camera that leaves you wondering if there's anything she can't do as a performer. This is streaming on the Criterion channel, and I'd recommend checking it out. 4 stars. Next, over to GeoGuessr for Film Bros 2012's Samsara, directed by Ron Frick. Shot on 70mm film in 25 countries on 5 continents over 5 years, Samsara is a documentary like nothing I've ever seen before. The title comes from the Hindu word for the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, which truly is all the guidance you need to appreciate the endlessly engrossing visuals, remarkable editing, and lack of any narration. Compared to documentaries with similarly striking shots of the natural world like Blue Planet that aim to teach, Samsara uses its visuals to get you to feel, to marvel, to examine the similarities between nature and humankind. The film juxtaposes imagery in a powerful way and then lets your mind puzzle out where that power comes from. Gliding from Petra in Jordan to Katrina-ravaged New Orleans, from a Japanese doll factory to an Indian monastery, from a Burger King in Long Beach to the demilitarized zone in Korea, Samsara is intentional in how it uses contrast to disorient you and change how you view the world for good. A truly stunning film. 4.5 stars. Then for a little religion, 1969's Salesman, directed by Albert Maysles, David Maysles, and Charlotte Zwerin. Salesman follows 4 door-to-door Bible salesmen as they contend with a general public that's less and less receptive to their hardline huckster sales tactics, and it's more than watchable from start to finish. As a documentary, it's fairly slight, even as fascinating as some negotiation sequences are, and as a film, it really doesn't come into its own to the last 10 minutes. But as filmmakers, the Maysles are first and foremost interested in putting everyday, strange people under the microscope to learn about the human condition and modern America more specifically. And in that respect, they succeed. Each of the 4 salesmen approach the job from different angles, but all seem to have one foot in the slimy and one foot in the resourceful. Watching them twist in the wind over and over with each disaffected housewife and senior citizen they fail to win over is the closest thing to cringe comedy the 60s has to offer. It's nowhere near as gripping a look into the psyche of people existing on the fringes as the Maysles' follow-up Grey Gardens, but let's be real, what can truly touch Grey Gardens? 3 stars. Up next, 1970's 5 Easy Pieces, written by Carol Eastman and directed by Bob Rafelson. This was much more class-focused than I was expecting, with Jack Nicholson's character oscillating from worlds that feel either too lowbrow and aimless or too highbrow and stifling. I kind of want to go back and watch it again knowing where the story goes because I really only started connecting with it in the last act when you could finally start to understand the push and pull going on inside Jack Nicholson's character. Karen Black understandably stole every scene she was in with her unique blend of heartbreak and optimism that really painted Jack Nicholson's character in the murky light he needed to shine. I'm gobsmacked that Karen Black lost the supporting actress Oscar that year to Helen Hayes playing nice old lady in Airport. I could really use that one explained to me. 3.5 stars. Then the hot, steaming mess that is Trap, written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Nobody simultaneously bores me to tears and frustrates the hell out of me like M. Night. After Old turned out to be truly one of the worst theater-going experiences I've ever had, I was dangling by a thread with still wanting to see his stuff in theaters if at all. Knock at the Cabin was fine, and the trailer for Trap intrigued me a good amount, so I dove back into the choppy Shyamalan water and prayed. Other than a terrific Josh Hartnett performance and some quality pop songs from Shyamalan's daughter as the concert's main act Lady Raven, I really struggle to like this at all. M. Night's dialogue has never been anything worthwhile, but it really felt like he threw in all the half-assed dialogue minutes before the camera started rolling. He also seems to have lost any idea of how to build tension past a single brief moment. I'm not asking for Hitchcock-level tension building, but there are some really great sequences of tension building in Unbreakable or Signs that I'd love for M. Night to rewatch and clue back into. 2 stars. Next, I settled a score with 1950's Born Yesterday, written by Albert Mannheimer and directed by George Cukor. 2 of my all-time favorite performances in film are Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard and Bette Davis in All About Eve. So it was a major surprise to find out years ago that they both lost the Best Actress Oscar that year to up-and-comer Judy Holliday playing the comedic role of a brash mistress to a DC bigwig. Ever since then, I've rolled my eyes at Judy Holliday's win without ever bothering to see her performance. Now, having seen her performance in Born Yesterday, I hereby formally apologize to Judy Holliday for scoffing at her win. She delivers a genius comedic performance that's layered, charming, and pitch-perfect emotionally. While I would have still given her Oscar to one of the other 2 ladies, she's more than earned her win. I'm an ass. Please respect my family's privacy during this difficult time. 4.5 stars. Then some 4D Bayou chess with 1975's Night Moves, written by Alan Sharp and directed by Arthur Penn. The plot's nothing to write home about, a private eye hired to track down a missing girl, but once you're lured in with simplicity, Night Moves has a more than tangled web for you to get stuck in. Compared to other hard-boiled detective stories, Night Moves puts the emphasis on why we ask questions, not just what questions we ask. The infamous chess game that spawned the last-minute title change is all about missed opportunities and misplaced priorities, so investigating the reasons behind how we problem-solve becomes more and more important the farther Gene Hackman pursues the truth. The first 30 minutes wading through the run-of-the-mill plot points was pretty boring, but I liked where it went, so 3.5 stars. Next, I watched 1931's Le Million, written and directed by Renee Clair. This is the Frenchiest little musical I've ever seen, with a couple scoops of screwball and farce thrown in. It feels like the kind of film Wes Anderson would have made if he were working back in the 30s, from that gorgeous opening tracking shot of the Parisian night skyline, to the emphasis Renee Clair puts on key props and pieces of scenery. The film follows a penniless painter with debts throughout town who miraculously wins the lottery only to lose the winning ticket, sending him and those around him on a mad dash to track it down before his debtors come calling. The plot doesn't end up being all that important though. Le Million runs on the upbeat sense of fantasy the world of the film gives off, with the slight yet impactful songs shining through to add that extra sparkle. The one element I didn't love is starting the film at the end of the story, spoiling how everything would turn out. I don't quite know what that added to the film other than the punch of emotion right at the top. 3.5 stars. Next, a cult favorite I finally checked off my list, 2001's Ghost World, written by Terry Zwigoff and Daniel Close and directed by Terry Zwigoff. This was much more strangely paced than I would have thought given how revered it is. For every part that felt accessible and quirky, there were 2 parts that felt inaccessible and oddly off-putting. By the time everything wrapped up, I was more on board with the overall ride, but definitely not as enjoyable as I was anticipating. Steve Buscemi carried a lot of the film for me by playing unlikable so endearingly and giving a few otherwise flat scenes some very interesting depth. Also, imagine Terry Garr wanting to move in with you and you're upset about it. Irredeemable. Say yes and take the win. 3 stars. Up next, some slapstick with 1963's The Suitor, written by Pierre Etey and Jean-Claude Carrière, and directed by Pierre Etey. When I gasp at something phenomenal in the first 20 seconds, I know it's going to be a great time. My gasp came from this incredible opening shot of miniatures come to life that sets up the funhouse world the character sees around him. Sadly, nothing else in the film wowed me like that opening shot, but it's an affable enough piece of filmmaking that replaces the madcap, manic nature of other slapstick icons with a brand of comedy that's more gentle and romanticized. This was my first film from Pierre Etey, so looking forward to checking out the rest of his work in the future. 3.5 stars. And I finished the month with 1999's The Straight Story, written by Mary Sweeney and John Roach and directed by David Lynch. I hate being that basic bitch whose favorite David Lynch film is the most mainstream, non-Lynchian film in his filmography, but here we are. It's a one-of-a-kind package of unbridled charm, profound sadness, and irrepressible humanity, fueled by one of the greatest film performances I've ever seen from Richard Farnsworth. Farnsworth plays the real-life Alvin Straight, who after a series of dire health diagnoses, decides to travel from Iowa to Wisconsin to make amends with his ailing, estranged brother, using his only means of transportation, a riding lawnmower. Farnsworth's real-life health conditions mirrored Straight's while making the film, and he sadly passed away shortly after the film was completed, which just adds to the heart and power of the film. It's a really incredible movie. 4.5 stars. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on these movies? Any others I should check out? Could you use some more? Also, stay tuned for other great commentary videos, reviews, video essays, and more. You can check me out on Letterboxd at Cineramadome24 or on TikTok at Film in the Blank. I appreciate you liking and subscribing. See you next time.